All right, welcome back, deep divers. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today we're heading back to Hogwarts, but things are getting a bit more serious this time around.
Yeah, definitely.
We're diving into Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Harry's 5th year.
Big year.
It is a big year. You guys sent in a ton of great notes and theories, so let's see what we can unpack together, shall we?
Sounds good to me.
Now, Order of the Phoenix, it often gets called like a turning point in the series. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. The tone definitely shifts. It gets a lot darker.
Right. It's not all just Quidditch and feasts anymore. We've got, well, Voldemort's officially back.
No more denying it.
No more denying it. The Ministry of Magic, though, they're in full-on denial mode, right?
Big time.
And then we've got this mysterious Order of the Phoenix working in the shadows. I know you flagged the tension between the Ministry and the Order as something worth exploring.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting dynamic. You've got Cornelius Fudge. He's so desperate to maintain control, keep everything stable.
Right.
That he just refuses to acknowledge, the huge threat that Voldemort's return actually poses.
So it's deeper than just, burying his head in the sand.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's choosing to be ignorant.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think is driving Fudge to such extremes? It's kind of crazy.
Well, I think fear has to be a huge part of it, right?
Definitely.
Fear of losing his power, fear of the chaos that Voldemort represents.
All of that, for sure.
And that fear, it just completely warps his judgment.
Yeah.
And he ends up making decisions that really harm the people he's supposed to be protecting.
Oh, yeah, big time.
And it's not just fear, is it? There's this element of pride, too.
Ooh. Good point.
Fudge, he's built his whole career on this idea that he defeated Voldemort, that he brought peace to the wizarding world.
Right.
So admitting that Voldemort's back, it just completely shatters that image he's created for himself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's classic, holding on to a story even when all the evidence is pointing in a different direction.
So human, right?
It is. And it's a good reminder that people in power, they're not immune to making those kinds of mistakes,
They are still human after all.
Exactly.
And speaking of, well, not so great authority figures, we can't forget about Dolores Umbridge. Our favorite pink-clad, well, kind of dictator.
She's the worst.
I know, she's awful.
Oh.
But she represents a different kind of control, right?
Yeah, she does. It's more like under the radar.
It's sneakier?
Yes. Sneaky, operating under the guise of rules and order, but really it's just
manipulation.
Total manipulation. It's amazing how she's able to manipulate the system, silence anyone who disagrees, and keep things exactly the way she wants them.
Right. All smiles and kittens on the surface, but underneath, yikes.
She's terrifying.
Seriously terrifying. And she's so threatened by anyone who dares to question the Ministry, especially Harry and Dumbledore.
Especially.
And she doesn't just, censor information. She actively punishes those who speak out against her.
Right. Totally. Think about the detention she gives Harry, making him write with that blood quill.
Oh, it's brutal.
It's straight up psychological torture.
Disguised as discipline, yeah.
Yeah.
Which brings us to Dumbledore's army. Such an amazing act of rebellion.
I love Dumbledore's army.
Me too. You marked this in the book as such a pivotal moment, and I totally agree. It's incredible.
It's it shows you what happens when people are denied access to knowledge.
Right. They're not allowed to learn. They're not given agency.
So they create their own spaces.
To learn, to empower themselves, to grow.
Exactly.
And for Dumbledore's army, it's not even just about learning defense spells, is it? It's about taking control of their education.
Totally.
It's about defying a system that's failing them.
And finding their voices.
Yes. And using those voices to challenge authority. And what I love is that it's not just Harry, Ron, and Hermione.
That's what makes it so cool.
Right. We see students from all the different houses coming together, and they're all united by this desire to learn and protect themselves.
It's inspiring.
It is. It really makes you wonder, if Hogwarts had just provided a decent defense against the dark arts curriculum in the first place,
right?
Would Dumbledore's army even exist?
Yeah.
Maybe Umbridge's tyranny accidentally created a revolution.
Whoa, that's a really interesting thought. It's when they try to suppress something.
It can backfire.
Totally. It just makes people want it more.
And fuels the resistance even more. Speaking of suppression, we can't forget about the reason Harry is stuck with the Dursleys every summer.
Oh, right.
You mentioned there's more to it than just basic protection, right?
Yeah, the blood magic.
Oh, the blood magic protection.
It's a brilliant twist. The people who make Harry's life miserable are the key to him staying alive.
I know. Can you remind me how that works again? Something about Lily's sacrifice and like a blood connection.
Yeah, so when Lily sacrificed herself to save Harry from Voldemort, that act of love, it created a magical protection around Harry, a shield that Voldemort can't break.
Okay.
And because Petunia is Lily's sister, that blood connection, it anchors that protection to the Dursleys' house.
So as long as Harry can call that place home, he's tethered to that love-fueled shield. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The most awful, soul-crushing place imaginable is actually the key to his survival.
It's wild. It really shows you how magic can work in unexpected ways.
It does.
Like, even the smallest details can be super important. And it speaks to the power of a mother's love. Like, that's magic that goes beyond death.
I know, chills. Okay, before we move on to the prophecy and Harry's struggles with destiny, I want to hear from you guys. Listeners, what are your thoughts so far? Anything in particular that's hidden home for you?
So we were talking about unexpected magic, and that makes me think about the prophecy surrounding Harry.
Oh, right.
You had a lot to say about that in your notes.
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical chosen one story, is it? The way it's presented, it's so vague.
It really is. Like, even the actual wording of the prophecy, it's all, either must die at the hand of the other, and neither can live while the other survives.
Right.
It never actually says Harry has to be the one to kill Voldemort.
Or the other way around.
Exactly. It just lays out like a possible outcome.
A path they could go down.
Yeah, but just knowing about the prophecy, doesn't that like weigh so heavily on Harry?
I mean, it feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
It does, right? Like, if Harry believes he's destined to kill Voldemort, is that going to make him more likely to do it?
It's scary to think about.
And that's exactly what Dumbledore tries to teach him.
Oh, right.
He keeps saying the prophecy doesn't control their actions, it just shows them one possibility.
It's their choices that matter.
Yes. How they respond to that knowledge, that's where the real power lies.
So it's not about fate, it's about free will.
Exactly.
That's a lot for a teenager to process.
It really is. Harry has to decide how he wants to interpret the prophecy, you know?
Right.
Does he let it consume him, or does he forge his own path? And that's where his struggles with occlumency, they get really interesting.
His inability to master occlumency, it's not just a random plot device, is it?
No way. It ties directly into this whole prophecy dilemma.
I never thought about it like that.
Think about it. His lessons with Snape are a disaster, right? Because Harry is so emotionally vulnerable.
He's dealing with so much.
Exactly. Anger, resentment, grief over losing his parents.
All of that just bottled up inside.
And those raw emotions, they make him susceptible to Voldemort's influence, which makes occlumency almost impossible to master.
So his emotions are both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness.
That's such a great point. His capacity for love, his compassion, that's what ultimately protects him from Voldemort.
But at the same time,
But those same emotions, they leave him open to mental attacks, to manipulation.
that's heavy stuff.
It is. And
Yeah.
it reminds me of something you mentioned earlier, Dumbledore's line about the power of love.
Oh, right. That's a line that gets thrown around a lot. But I feel like there's a much deeper meaning to it, you know?
There is. That's why it resonates with people, you know? The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches.
Chills.
Right. It speaks to something true, like love in its purest form. It really is powerful.
And it's not just romantic love either.
No, definitely not. It's the love between friends, loyalty to a cause, that unwavering belief in something bigger than yourself.
That's what Voldemort doesn't get, right?
Exactly. He thinks love is weak, something foolish.
But it's the strongest magic there is.
I love that. It's what connects people, what inspires courage, what fuels the fight for good.
And it's that love, Lily's sacrifice, that keeps protecting Harry even now.
It's a beautiful idea, isn't it? That act of selfless love, it created the shield that keeps him safe.
Even after all this time.
It's like a mother's love. That's a force that can even transcend death.
Wow, chills again.
Okay.
Listeners, I want to ask you, what gives you strength? What are those things that help you get through tough times, that give you resilience?
It's a good question to think about. We tend to focus so much on the external threats, the Voldemorts of the world.
Right.
But sometimes the biggest battles, they're the ones we fight within ourselves.
And that's where Harry's journey becomes so relatable.
Totally.
He's not this perfect hero.
No, he's just a kid.
He's a teenager dealing with loss, with trauma, with this prophecy hanging over his head.
But he keeps going.
He makes mistakes, he doubts himself, he gets scared, but he never gives up.
And that's what makes him such a great hero.
That resilience, that spirit.
Exactly. And speaking of heroes, we can't forget about Sirius Black
Oh, yeah.
and the loss Harry experiences in this book.
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
It is. You marked this as a big turning point for Harry, emotionally.
It is. Sirius represented freedom for Harry,
A family?
a chance at a normal life, and then it's just ripped away.
It's brutal.
It really forces Harry to face the fact that love can't protect everyone.
That's a hard lesson to learn.
It is. But it also shows us that love is powerful even in death.
Oh, for sure.
Even though Sirius is gone, the love they shared, the memories, they're still there.
They're a part of Harry.
And in a way, Sirius's death makes Harry even more determined to fight Voldemort.
Right, like he's fighting to honor the people he's lost.
It's a reminder that even in grief, there's room for growth, for change.
Absolutely. And speaking of growth, I was thinking about the parallel journeys of Harry and the Weasley twins in this book.
Oh, it's interesting.
Both of them, they're rebelling against a system that feels suffocating, unfair.
Right, Harry with Dumbledore's army, and the twins with their decision to leave Hogwarts.
To follow their dream.
Exactly. They're both choosing to create their own paths, to find success on their own terms.
And that's a really powerful message about being yourself.
Following your heart, even if it means going against the grain.
And that takes courage, right? To go against what's expected of you.
It does. To embrace the unknown, believe in yourself, even when others don't.
It's inspiring.
It is. Listeners, I'm curious. Have you ever had to rebel against expectations? Break free from something that wasn't working for you?
It's a big decision to make.
It is. But sometimes those moments of rebellion, they can be life-changing.
They can lead you to new discoveries, help you figure out who you are.
And it shows us that even when things feel dark, when we feel lost, we have the power to make choices, to take action.
To make a difference.
That's powerful. And it brings us back to the whole prophecy thing, that question of destiny versus free will.
It always comes back to that, doesn't it?
Because ultimately what matters isn't what the prophecy says.
It's how Harry chooses to respond.
Exactly.
And that's what makes Order of the Phoenix such a powerful book.
It doesn't give you easy answers.
It doesn't shy away from how complicated life can be.
It just makes you think about the choices you make, what's important to you, the kind of world you want to live in. You know, it's funny, we've been going back and forth this whole time about destiny.
Yeah, prophecies, they always seem to do that, don't they? Make you question everything.
Make you face those fears.
Exactly.
And for Harry, that happens, well, after the Ministry, after Sirius.
He's at his lowest point.
He's grieving. He wants answers.
And that's when Dumbledore finally tells him everything.
Lays it all out there.
The prophecy, the choice, that power Voldemort just can't understand.
It's a huge moment for Harry.
It changes everything for him.
It shifts the focus from the outside to the inside.
Yeah, it's not about some big bad guy out there anymore.
It's about the darkness inside all of us.
And realizing that the strongest thing you have,
It's not some magical ability.
it's the choices you make.
And the love you choose.
It all comes back to love, doesn't it? Even the blood magic protection, that tiny detail that ends up saving Harry's life.
It's like those hidden threads in a tapestry.
Right. You don't see them until you step back and look at the whole picture.
And that's what makes Order of the Phoenix so good, I think.
You always find something new.
There are so many layers.
We talked about secrecy and control, about prophecies, about how hard it can be to fight against a broken system.
And most importantly, we talked about love.
The thing that brings us together.
The thing that gives us strength, even in the darkest times. So, listeners, as we wrap up our deep dive, what are you taking away from all of this? What really stuck with you? What questions are still swirling around in your head?
For me, it's the idea that even when things seem hopeless, there's always hope. Even when everything seems to be falling apart, there's still good in the world. And that good comes from us, from choosing to love, to connect with each other, to be kind, even when it's tough.
That's a beautiful thought. And I think it's only fitting to leave our listeners with Dumbledore's words. We are only as strong as we are united, as weak as we are divided.
So true. So go out there, be your best selves, find your people, and remember, love always wins.
This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey through Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix.